Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 360 podcast. Fascinating conversations with interesting people, and I am your host, Tim Braheem. And today I am really excited to welcome a dear friend, someone who I admire and respect greatly, into this podcast, no one other than Craig Strent. Craig is the CEO and co-founder of Apex Home Loans and is now in charge of sales and production for Celebrity Home Loans. He graduated from the American University's School of Business with a bachelor's degree in science in business administration. Craig lives in Bethesda, Maryland, with his wife, Amy, and his two sons, Oliver and Sammy, and his two dogs, Pavarotti and Butters. In his free time, Craig is an avid roller hockey fan. He's a huge hockey fan in general, loves to hike the local trails in and around the Potomac River, travel the world, and he is an avid student of history, and in particular politics. For more than 15 years, Craig has been consistently ranked as one of the top 1% of mortgage bankers nationwide and has been named among the most influential mortgage executives in America. Craig holds a certified mortgage planning specialist designation, also known as CMPS, which speaks to his mortgage planning expertise in working with financial advisors to tailor a mortgage that complements long-term financial goals. And we're going to get into that today. We're going to get into talking about some diversification and referral sources as a mortgage professional for sure. This is a unique skill among mortgage bankers. It requires extensive training in the area of taxation, estate planning, and financial planning. Over the years, Craig has been recognized as a subject matter expert and has garnered both national and local attention for his adept understanding of the mortgage industry and housing market. He's provided commentary on NBC Nightly News, CNBC, News Channel 8 in Maryland, and Fox Morning News. And his writing has appeared in several notable publications, including the Washington Business Journal. A couple of interesting facts about Craig that you may not know if you are someone who is acquainted with Craig from the past. He was on the lawn of the White House as a press intern for the Middle East peace signing between Rabin and Arafat. He was in fact, Craig way back in the day, was an intern in the White House under the Clinton administration. Another thing that I think is an interesting fact is he attended 4 different schools between 6th and 9th grade due to his parents' divorce. And I'm going to dive into that with him in a moment and talk to him a little bit about how that might have affected his childhood and what he used from that learning to cultivate a tremendous business success. So without further ado, my interview with Craig Strent. What's up, brother?
Hey, Timmy.
How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. You're in the red room, the famous red room of the Strent home.
I am. This is my Abraham Lincoln themed office.
Oh boy, yeah. In the intro, I talked a little bit about how you have a fascination towards American history and have a little history as an intern in the White House and all that kind of stuff. So we'll probably dive into that in a little bit, but let's just have some fun, man. I'm so happy to have you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So right out of the gate, I guess, my first question for you is, just tell us a little bit about how long you've been in the business for. Give us a quick little 50,000 footer. How long you've been slinging loans and been in the mortgage biz?
1994, which was one of the worst job markets in 30 years coming out of college. I went into the mortgage business for no other reason than a fraternity brother was in it and he was doing well. And if he could do it, then I figured I could do it. Maybe even better. So I went in 94. I started out doing subprime consumer direct for 3.5 years, which was a great way to learn because it required persistence and lots of follow-ups. I learned great follow-up skills and sales skills and overcoming objections and all that before starting my own company in 1998, back then a mortgage brokerage called Apex Home Loans. Just 2 guys started in a hallway with some dead flies on the ground and some orange carpet, sharing a fax and a computer. And we built that into 2010 mortgage brokerage. And in 2010, we doubled down when the market was going the other way. I've always been a contrarian in business, and the market was going the opposite way. We decided to go from broker to banker, brought in a couple more partners, recapitalized, started expanding the company to where Apex Home Loans is today. And recently, Apex Home Loans was acquired by Celebrity Home Loans. So we started the company from scratch, built it all up, made a great company, won a lot of awards along the way. And then now we jumped in with our friends at Celebrity Home Loans and are on a whole new journey together.
I didn't realize that we had such a parallel situation. I mean, I started in 92, but, I was in the business in 94 remember it well, man. How about 9.5 on a 30-year? That's what I was selling back then. 9.5, dude. Like I remember rates dropped to like 8 and everybody was like going bananas because there were refi opportunities. Yeah. That's a kind of an environment where we had to grow up really fast, right? I mean, we had to learn how to like scratch and claw to get deals. And I think we should talk a little bit about that. But I love this thought that you just brought forward about being a contrarian. Let's just go there for a second. I mean, right now this is being recorded in, the late winter of 2022. And, we've got a lot of talk about inflation. We got a lot of talk about the Fed hiking anywhere between say 4 and 7 times this year. Would you be doubling down right now? I mean, what would you be doing right now if you were, well, you still are doing loans. So what are you doing actually? I mean, before you go there, just real quick, tell us how many loans, what was your dollar volume last year?
In 2021, I was at my team has taken over a lot of my production. I sort of forget. I think it was about 125 or so last year. The year before that was at 195.
And I mean, just to put it in perspective for everybody, I mean, 195 million, 125 million, it's all great, right? Anything over 100 million is awesome. You're running a company, you're in the process of selling a company, which is obviously a very time consuming experience. You're leading a company. How many people work for Apex?
About 150.
Yeah, 150 people that you're responsible for, and you still did those production numbers. So we're going to dive in and unpack like how you set that up and, like the maturation process of growing your team and making yourself, less needed on the team structure and still being able to have the machine run. But let's go back to the contrarian thing. Sorry to fork in the road there. Tell us a little bit more about that, about the thought process of being contrarian. When the shit hits the fan and times get tough, what's your thought process?
My business partner, my longtime business partner, Eric Gates, often quotes an investor who says that it's better to win alone than lose in company. But most people prefer to lose in company. And so they follow the herd when it comes to everything else. It's like the old story that if you're a hairdresser and your boot scrubber or your shoe shiner are telling you to buy a stock, it's probably time to sell and go the other way. So looking at where everything is going and figuring out the opposite way to go is something that we've tried to capitalize on as a company. It's very hard in the mortgage business, which is a hyper cyclical business, but we've been around long enough to know that opportunities are going to come. So you've got to plan for them. You don't know the duration between great markets, but you know that great markets are going to come and go. And if you want to maximize on those markets, you really need to be prepared ahead of time, not once you're in there.
Yeah, right. I mean, like I've said for a long time, I'm sure you've heard me say this. It's like in a market that's a transitioning market, it's he or she who pivots fastest to the next sell or the next product opportunity, the new script that's needed that has the success, because everybody else is stuck in lead boots and they're still selling the same thing, 30-year fix, 15-year fix. I mean, anybody that's been in the business the last 7 years, that's probably the only product they've sold in the last 7 years. They've got that script down, but that script doesn't work anymore when rates are going up, and you need to get other scripts down. So actually, let's go into scripting, because a little side story for those that don't know this. So I have this coaching program, Leadership 360. We have 2 retreats a year in our master's program. In that program, we have this really cool process that we call Scriptapalooza. And we keep evolving it, so I don't even know what it is anymore, but it's basically sales objections live, and you compete against a competitor, and it's like an NCAA tournament format. And then you have a winner who wins that event, Scriptapalooza. And Craig is always, how many times have you won it? Once or twice?
I won the first one.
You won the first one, but you're always in like the finals. I mean, you're always right there. And this is like on the fly scripting, right? You don't have any time to prepare for it. You draw the objection out of a fishbowl, and there it is. And you've got to like lay it out in front of 40 people that are standing there, and it's a bit nerve wracking and all that. I mean, it's intense. So scripting is important, isn't it? And what I want to know is like, tell me about your feelings about the importance of scripting. I mean, I always used to say that, scripting is everything. I mean, it's the words that come out of your mouth have everything to do with your success. But how important is it to you in your mind? And how did you become so well scripted? Like, is there a process that you went through? And what would you say to somebody listening who really needs to get better at scripting? What advice do you have?
There's a lot there. I mean, practice.
You got all kinds of time. So keep going.
Practice for sure. I mean, I learned in training programs, I reference some friends over at Zinix who are former fighter pilots. Before you go on your bombing run, you got to pick your targets. You got to know where you're going. You got to check your flight plan. You got to do everything ahead of time. It's the same thing here. Why should we just be winging it on the sales side? The more we know about what might happen, the more we know about what our goals of the conversation are, the more we know about what objections are going to come up on the other side, and the more we could think about how can we assuage the concerns of the potential person that we're trying to help, the more successful we're going to be as a result. So in terms of scripting, I think the best thing to do is to learn from others and then practice on your own as well. And when I was coming up in the business, I listened to folks, Tim, as you know, like you, I had all these CDs in my car on my 35-minute commute. And I would listen to all kinds of mortgage people to and from work. And they would talk about objections they were overcoming, marketing plans, business plans. I was investing time in myself by listening to those that have been successful. Swiping and adopting, certainly a core value for me in building my business, and learning what others are doing successfully. And then, and this is important, I would practice overcoming those objections out loud. I think when you speak out loud versus saying, what am I going to say if the guy asks me what's the rate and I don't have the lowest rate? But if you could say out loud over and over, here's how I'm going to overcome that. You can play around with the language and you learn by hearing yourself speak. So knowing where you want to go. And one of the things that for me works well in Scriptapalooza, so I'll give away my sort of scripting strategy here, is I think about where I want the conversation to go. So if somebody has an objection that's on the sales side, I already know where I want this sales conversation to go. Well, all I have to do once I hear the objection is build the bridge to where I want to go. And that's not that difficult to do. So if I know what my value proposition, and for me, it might be my mortgage under management program, and my total home program, and my life cycle of home ownership support, and all the comprehensive services I provide, I know that I want to get to that. And I know going into the conversation that they're going to ask me about rate and closing costs. So, and that's the reason they're asking me that is because they're asking everybody else that, and those are the only two questions they know to ask. So what I have to do is expect those questions and then build the bridge to where I want to take them in terms of how my process is different than what they're seeking initially.
Okay, so then let's test that out. Let's just do it right now live. So I'm going to throw out an objection and build a bridge and take us to your value prop. Let's see.
I wasn't expecting a Scriptapalooza here.
Well, it just, you never know where this is going to go. In fact, you never know where this is going to go. And to prove that point, let me just show you what I mean when I say you never know where this is going to go. I'm going to share my screen for a second. And I just would like to know what was happening here. Like, what is this?
Where did you get that? Oh, did I send this?
I don't know, but this looks like a mashup between like Pretty in Pink and A Bronx Tale. I don't know. What is this? I mean, that was
definitely a little bit of that was a Guido phase on Long Island in high school. You see my flipped over Jabot belt there, Jabot pants and my belt. And that's my older brother, Mark. And we were definitely in a different stage then.
Yeah, you were, I can't look at that anymore. Let's get back to the scripting. All right. So here's the objection, right? I'm not going to give you something ridiculously hard, but I'm not going to give you a layup either. I've got other lenders that I'm talking to. One of them I've worked with before, and they did a great job for me. And their rates appear to be at least as good as yours, if not a little bit better. So I don't think that I'm going to end up going with you. Why should I go with you?
That's a great question. And I think you're intelligent to ask it. And most people do start out by asking about interest rate. At the end of the day, when we look at surveys that come back and feedback, what we find is that very few people in the end make their inevitable decision based on rate. And if you take a look at our surveys, send you a link for that as well, you'll see that evidence played out. And I encourage you to do that. What I would offer to you is that you might be comparing just a rate to something that is entirely different. And what we do at Apex is we support the entire life cycle of home ownership. And that doesn't just involve what most mortgage people do, which is just the transactional part in the middle, but it involves the upfront piece. It involves a detailed analysis that takes into consideration the short and long-term financial planning goals that you have. I want to know if you're maxing out your 401k that's sponsored by your employer. I want to know if you've already paid for college for your children. I want to know if the right insurance policies are already in place for you. I want to know what holes there are on your financial plan, and I want to use the mortgage as a tool. I want to take that liability side of the balance sheet and leverage it to help you shore up your asset side of the balance sheet. So that's what my mortgage structure will do. It's a lot more than a rate. And once you get into process, you'll see a major difference with us and other lenders. It sounds like you've been through the process before. My team has a written perfect loan process. And as you're asking other people for rates and closing costs, I would suggest you ask them for their process as well. If they don't have a written process that's going to guarantee that they deliver a really great borrowing experience for you, you might want to ask, why not? Don't we want to know everything that could possibly come up ahead of time? After all, you're putting a $25,000 earnest money deposit I see here. And I know that you've beat out multiple other offers to get this home. And I know that you have no contingencies for your financing and appraisal as is common in this market. So we need to make sure, guaranteed, that you're going to close on time, but also clean. So that's the middle part. And then finally, this is the most important part. Most mortgage people, you don't hear from them after things close. That's just when our relationship begins. With our mortgages under management program, you're going to make sure you never overpay on your mortgage. We're going to set an auto lock target so we know exactly where savings can occur and where we should refinance. We're then going to monitor that for you on an automated basis, pulling in daily rates and your credit criteria. And we're going to send you a quarterly rate watch so we know what's going on at all times. We're also going to connect you with lots of other things. Our homeowner digest through something called HomeBot that we use that will always let you know what's going on with your equity and how you can manage it, among so many other great tools that I'd be happy to cover with you.
Money. I mean, there's so many things to unpack there that we could probably do the rest of the podcast just on that script. But I want to touch upon a couple that I think are incredibly important. I want to rewind all the way back to the beginning. So I have this vision of you with that belt on, driving in your car when you're like 23 years old, talking to yourself, doing your scripting in the car on your way to work. And it's just hilarious to me. But what I used to do was something very similar. Okay. But it was in a different genre. So when I first started in the business, one of the things that I recognized right away, bro, was that like, I need to get a lot of at-bats. Okay. I mean, that's actually the biggest problem for somebody that is in a market that's transitioning. Like right now, like in this current environment, things have slowed down. And if you don't have a lot of at-bats, you don't have a lot of time to practice the script. You don't have a lot of time to practice the objections. So in your case, you're practicing it in your car after listening to probably Jim McMahon and Greg Frost and all those legendary guys from back in the day.
Yes.
And I accomplished the same thing. I also listen to those guys, but I accomplished the same thing by cranking up my marketing. Now that can be scary in a down market when people are like, hey, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from, but it's like, what business do you know of that's successful that doesn't reinvest a certain percentage of their revenues back into creating more business? But see, that's a critical mistake a lot of loan originators make, is that they won't spend money until they have the money. But you need to spend money on your business to build that foundation. So we had a telemarketing
and bro, those that have the money now from being really successful in the last 18 to 24 months are now going into scarcity because they don't have as much pipeline. Instead of investing that money, yes, they're holding it back.
Yes, correct. So when the shit hit the fan in 94, that's when we started a telemarketing operation. And it started with one telemarketer who would come in 3 days a week from like 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock and dial. And I'd come into my office the next day and there'd be, 4 sheets of paper sitting there on my desk of different people that he talked to. And I would call those people and I had to sell that negative amortization 11th district cost of funds index that nobody knew how to sell, but I finally figured out how to sell it because I got enough objections and I tweaked and adjusted and modified to where I got to the point where people were like, yes. And I was able to do 5 loans a month, which back then was a lot because as you know, when rates were at 9.5, doing 5 loans a month was like, that was huge. Okay. So that's one thing that I want to really emphasize is that both of us practiced a lot in our own way, but like, and then, when we ramped, one last thing, when we ramped, like when we were in 95, 96, I would go upstairs we had scaled it. We had 13 telemarketers upstairs in a bullpen, and they would have direct transfers into my headset until 9:30 at night. I used to tell people all the time, like, I may be 27 years old, but I have the experience of a 40-year-old loan officer because I've taken more calls than anybody that I know. Like, I mean, I just was taking tons of calls and getting better and better and better as a result of all those at bats. The other thing that I want to point out that Craig talked about, that I'm a huge, passionate person about when it comes to scripting, is he set up his competition. And what I mean by that is this, is that he knows damn well that if you ask anybody else, do you have a written process that I can take a look at so I can understand exactly how this experience is going to look for me? That 99% of the people are going to be like, I don't. So he just sabotaged his competition. He gave that person the tools of what to ask for. He loaded their gun, so to speak, of how to create a negative experience in that dialogue with that other competitor, because he has something that nobody else has. And then finally, the last part, which, as you know, I'm a huge fan of, is setting up the next deal. So I want to talk about that for a minute. So like, that was my bread and butter. Like, my loan my job just begins when your first loan closes with me. From there, it's my job to assist you in managing the largest indebtedness you'll ever take on your life. Most people that do what I do for a living just provide the debt and walk away. I don't make that mistake. When rates drop, we're gonna seek to lower the cost of your debt. My question to you is, what's the mechanism? Because I think you use some really amazing things with how you proactively communicate to your borrowers where their mortgage debt is right now compared to the market. What's the tools that you use for that?
Use a post-closing call. And I'm going to give you that in one sec. I do want to call out something, Tim, on the value prop that you said at the beginning, in that we know that a certain percentage of people buy on rates. It's less than 50%. I was once told it was 15% years ago. I think it's more now with the millennial population, but it's still a small number comparatively. So what I would offer to loan officers out there is, the sooner you figure out if you're talking to someone who's going to buy exclusively on the basis of rate, the better off you are. So get right to it and understand it, because then you can move on. There's enough people, as Seth Godin would say, that you want to find the smallest viable audience for what you offer. And there's enough people out there to do that. So the sooner you know that somebody's not right for you, the better. Don't try to be something that you're not. So to your question, what we do is a post-closing call. And on that call, we take a look. We come prepared, of course. We take a look at the mortgage. We just got them. And we figure out what's the right break even for a refi. Maybe 2 years or so. And they say if $300, it's going to cost them this much money, they'll break even in 2 years. And we offer that as a solution. We say, Tim, we just finished the refinance. Rates are here. I'm not saying they're ever going to go back down enough for it to make sense for you to refinance. But if rates got to this point, you would save $300 a month and your break even would be about 24 months, which is about the longest we'd like to see it. Would you like us to give you a call and alert you that an opportunity exists if that happens so we can move forward? Typically, they say yes, or they say, you know what, I don't want to go through this again unless I could save $400. Great, let's make it $400 a month, or whatever the number is. And we land on that number. We gain verbal agreement, verbal contract that says, yes, if we get to this, you would like to move forward. We then put it into our pricing engine with their specific criteria, credit score, all that stuff, loan to value, and we get notified when it happens, if it happens, and sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes rates will drop significantly, as they did in March of 2020, and I could get 50 of these in one day. It could happen. It has happened. But sometimes you won't get any for months. The point is, I already know where on the rate drop scale things are going to be active, and I could sort of track ahead of that. Additionally, I send out quarterly reports. This is something that I've done for almost 20 years and is super important, and I think really separates us. I send a mailed physical report. Nobody mails anything anymore, and I think that's a miss. I mail a report to print it out, comes out of my CRM, window envelope, live stamp, foil seal, looks very nice, says your Rate Watch report is enclosed. Clients get it every single quarter for 20 plus years. And sometimes they'll say to me when I talk to them during an annual review, why do you send this to me all the time? It never makes sense for me to refinance. And incidentally, I usually write a note. Looking good now, doesn't make sense. Just like you said before, Tim, most loan officers let go when the loan is over, but I don't make that mistake. I manage the largest debt. This is me managing that debt. And so I am building credibility by telling them every quarter, doesn't make sense, doesn't make sense, doesn't make sense. And then as rates starts to drop, looking better, looking better. Meanwhile, every month I'm in front of them and I drop some marketing message into the letter as well. And then if I finally say, hey, the rate has hit, now it makes sense to refinance, there is no discussion at this point. It's a presumptive close. I've already have complete credibility. And that's why my numbers really spike during refi periods as well. So somebody told me a long time ago, you pay the bills on purchases and you retire on refis. So you just got to get as many purchases as you can and then hang in there and really clean up in the other markets as well.
Whoever told you that's brilliant. Okay. So I've never heard that before, but whoever said that is brilliant. It drives me bananas when I hear loan originators say, I don't do refis. I only focus on purchases. That's just a gigantic miss. First of all, you're not doing a good job for your client if you're not focusing on managing their debt, period, end of story. Secondly, is that presumptive close is super important. I don't want anybody to lose sight of what he just did. He made verbal contracts with these people when he closed that first loan. So it's not a phone call that's like, hey, I've got some new numbers for you. Would you like to talk about refi? No. It's like, hey, remember what we talked about? We got it. We're moving forward. Okay. And people just roll over when you make the decision for them. Lastly, sell the big numbers. Okay. It may only be $200 a month. That doesn't sound exciting. $2,400 a year sounds great. Okay. 12,000, whatever it is, $12,000 a year, I believe, time over 5 years sounds even better. You know, those are the things that get people to take action and move the needle a bit. So I'm going to pivot go ahead.
And that does go the other way. So if you're fighting on a deal and there's a savings and the other person's savings is 30, they say their payments can be $30 less, break it out. $30 less minus the tax benefit at 38% is this month, and then divided by 12, it's this month, and then you take it to the week. So basically, you're going to leave me over $2.87 a week, which is not even a cup of coffee, right? So get it granular. Well, you want to make it big the other way. We could save you $27,300 over the life of your loan, whatever the number is. When you're fighting for a deal with savings, take it down to the lowest possible amount to show that the difference is minuscule.
Yeah, that eighth and rate. Okay, like this is a line that I used to use. Okay, I don't even know if you've ever heard this script from me, but like that eighth and rate after tax, to your point, let's say it's $17 a month, okay, which is, you know, roughly $200 a year. So my statement would be like, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is $200 a year, okay, which I don't ever want to make light of saving money. I'm big on saving money in my personal life and for all my clients. But we have to weigh out, will you spend that money on aspirin curing all the headaches that you're going to get from working with somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing and doesn't have a process that's going to make this efficient and quick? And what other costs might you incur as a result of them not doing their job as professionally as my team and I will? Okay, so we're going to get to team in a minute. I'm going to ask you another question in a minute, but I want to dive in because you mentioned Seth Godin. I wanted to ask you a question about that. So like one of the things I love about you, you know, you're always sending me emails all the time from Seth, quotes from Ronald Reagan, Abraham Lincoln. I love how you are inspired. You're a student, man. Like that's one of the things that I think is just a really precious thing about you is that you're always learning, you're always growing. And I think that's why you're great at what you do. So I mentioned three people that I know that are heroes of yours: Reagan, Lincoln, Godin. What have they each taught you? Tell us a little bit about those three men and what you've learned from them.
I'll start with Seth Godin. He is a master marketer. I mean, by the way, if you Google Seth, you get Seth Godin. Like that's how long he's been marketing and how much street cred he has. His daily blog is incredible. He's been doing it for years. I mentioned earlier, he talks about finding the smallest viable audience that wants your product. I think that's super important. Loan officers, be the loan officer you want to be. Don't go in without a plan and just take any loan that comes at you. If you want to be the guy that does reverse, if you want to be the construction perm guy, if you want to be the guy like me that works with financial advisors and divorce lawyers, that's great. Be that person. Get the education, get the knowledge, invest in yourself, and then find the smallest viable audience that will support the production and income level you want. And when people don't fit into that audience, then, you know, decide whether or not you're going to work with those people or whether you're going to move on to others. So I really like that Seth says that. Seth also talks a lot about fixed costs. Just because you've spent a lot of money trying to do something and it's still not working doesn't mean you have to keep going down that path. A fixed cost that's done is a sunk cost, and the likelihood of success in what you're pursuing is not greater just because you've already spent a lot before. So he does talk about, you know, failing forward and failing a lot and doing it quickly and learning from it. So those are all some big takeaways that I've taken from him. And to be something different, my wife always jokes about the book that he has that I love called Purple Cow. And Purple Cow is about having a blue ocean strategy, about being something that others are not. For me, that's my, you know, the financial advisor referral system I developed, which goes after the financial advisor niche. I believe that's a blue ocean strategy. Other people aren't doing it. That's different than everybody calling the same realtor. So Seth really drives home unique, different? Is it worth doing? The final thing that I love about him is he says, ship it. What he means by that is do not let great be the enemy of good. So many times we don't do the mailer, or we don't do this, we don't go to this place, or we don't call this person, or we don't execute on this script because it's not perfect. We don't think it's ready. I believe in continuous improvement. It's one of my core values in my company, the Japanese principle of Kaizen, which means basically ship it, put it out there, deliver it, my perfect loan process version 1, get it on paper, and then improve it always, always as you go. I'm on version 30 something of my perfect loan process. So that's the Seth Godin piece.
I want to unpack Kaizen a little bit more. In fact, why don't we just do that right now? So if you want to go a little deeper with that, that's important, I think, for people to hear, because I know that it's how you manage both your business and your personal life in a lot of ways, right? Is that continuous improvement part. But before we do, I just want to highlight, I see so many loan originators who just prepare to sell and prepare to sell and prepare to sell and prepare to market, prepare to build a team, and they never do it. And it's like, you can't be afraid of not doing it perfect. As you said, don't let, great be the enemy of good. Get out there, and that's, you got to get in the game and test and adjust accordingly. That's how I did it. That's how you did it. That's how all the friends that we have that are superstar originators, and we have a lot of them at this point, we all did it that way. Right. So Kaizen, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. And to that note, Tim, I think it's fun to call out. It's not a perfect loan process, actually. It's a good loan process. Perfect is the destination.
Mine was perfect, but that's,
Kaizen is the Japanese business principle of continuous improvement. I was sitting in a senior year class on business leadership at the American University, and Professor Richard Lenoz, who had worked a lot in Japan, was talking about this, how we're each trying to improve as we go, and how it's never over. Whatever process you're working in, whatever product you're working on, there's always more that can be done to improve it. And the minute you fall behind is the minute you get run over, and you almost need to cannibalize yourself. It's the idea of, if it's not broken, break it, make it better, build it back up. Because if we don't, somebody else is right behind us trying to do that. So we got to break our own stuff and make it better on a constant basis. And for me, that very much applies to my core principles in business, as how I've tried to build Apex and what I'm bringing to celebrity home loans now. And as you mentioned, on a personal level, I'm not where I want to be personally. And I would say that I'm not where I want to see business. I don't think I'll ever get there, because I think holding yourself to always wanting to do better is good for growth. When you get out of your comfort zone and you try to make that comfortable, that's where the real magic and the real growth happens. And I believe in that strongly. So on a personal level, I'm always trying to improve myself personally. I fail at it plenty, just like everybody else. But I learn a lot along the way. And I do start my day, as you know, with sort of a miracle morning. And I make sure that I get my exercise in. I love hiking outside and being in nature with my dogs. I like to read in the morning, Seth Godin and my daily blogs that I get before I get into a headspace where I have to work. And I think it's super important. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday, who talks a lot about this. I think it's super important to carve out time for yourself in the morning before you approach your day and look at your phone.
Yeah, boy, I hear, man. Like, it's funny because I was copying and pasting some of my time logging into my Genius Grid. I won't get into the rabbit hole of what that means for those that don't know what it means, but it's essentially my activities during my day that I've logged, and then putting them into one of 4 quadrants that represent whether I'm working at the highest level of productivity and enjoyment versus low productivity and low enjoyment. And one of the things that I really noticed, bro, is like the days, because I logged from the time I woke up until the time I went to bed, the days that I woke up and had a spacious morning, like an extra half hour to like sit there and drink my coffee and to almost just kind of drift off and just not be under any time constraints, not feel rushed. Those were the days that ended up being really good days. Like it's so important to kickstart your day the right way, and continuous improvement and breaking it so you can fix it. Like, I think that, your point is really well taken. It's can you enjoy the journey, right? Like, I mean, can you enjoy the learning process? And I think that that's something that that's one of the things that meditation's been really powerful for me. I mean, I no longer, and it's been quite some time, I no longer judge my meditations in the morning. Some of them are deep. Today was like crazy deep. Others are very chaotic for 45 minutes or an hour, just thinking the whole time. I've gotten to the point where I realize, it's all good, because the times where it's chaotic, just like if I have a tough day at work, or I put out a marketing piece and it didn't yield, or I'm using this script and it's not working, or, some strategic plan that I'm trying to execute isn't working. It's like, it's who you are with yourself when that's happening, right? Like, are you curious and embracing, what is it that I'm meant to learn here? What do I need to tweak and adjust to get better? Or are you hard on yourself? Are you disappointed? Are you frustrated? It's, how you relate to yourself when you're going through the issue is the issue. I'm really glad that you brought that point up. So let's go to the next guy, unless you have something to say. That would be either Ronald Reagan or Abe Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln resonated with me. Just my parents took me to Washington, D.C., where I live now, just outside of, when I was a young boy, and I was just, I've always been impressionable, but I was just really blown away by the Lincoln Memorial, and seeing that at that time, and reading the speeches on the side there, and just decided to dig deeper into Abraham Lincoln. And the deeper I go, the more I love it. So really some principles there. Abe Lincoln and I are definitely very different people, but I feel like I can learn a lot from him. He was particularly tall, as you're aware. He had no vices at all. He was a great storyteller, but I've just really sort of latched on to some things in terms of integrity and honesty in my business dealings. And I just feel, to me, that's the most important things. You can skin a sheep once, but you can shear it for a lifetime. And I think that doing right by people with regard to their mortgage, to me, is so critical. It's their home, it's their money. These are very personal issues. People get emotional around it. And I want to be on the right side of the table with them. I used to actually sit frequently. It would freak people out a little bit, but when we were going to a meeting, when they would come into the office to talk about their mortgage, I would make a big effort not to sit across the table from them. I tried to get myself on the same side of the table, and I would tell them it's because I wanted to show them paperwork and not have to read it backwards. And that seemed to work. But I believe that's a really important one. And that's been a core value for Apex for a long time, is treating our employees correctly. We've won so many awards for best places to work, and the trickle down really works on this. If you take care of your employees and you do the right things by the people that are on your team, they will show up as the best versions of themselves when they speak to your customers. If they're unhappy and you're not treating them well, they will show up poorly to your customers. And this will all come out in your referral business, in your surveys, and in your everything else. And then surrounding yourself, as Lincoln did with Team of Rivals and his cabinet, surrounding yourself with different opinions. A lot of people don't want to hear things that they don't like to hear. And as you know, from coaching me for many, many years, I say, bring that. I am way open, probably way too far open to constructive feedback. I want to call it criticism. I want to call it feedback and suggestions. If someone tells me that they think I could be doing something better, I don't get defensive on that. I might explain my position, but if they give me a tip to improve, I am very appreciative of that, and I actively seek that out. And I think that all comes from Lincoln and educating himself with no formal education, and sort of pulling himself up. And at the end of the day, doing really the right thing for this country, even if it meant sacrificing himself in the end. So he really resonates with me.
Yeah, when we had Ryan Holiday in Tucson at the master's program, he also mentioned something that I know that you were a big fan of, which was the letters, right? The letters. Can you tell us about that? Yeah, tell us about that. That's a really important one right there.
Abraham Lincoln had a practice called hot lettering, which I wasn't even aware of until I realized that I was doing it. I learned about it later. So early in my career, when I wasn't very good at putting space between stimulus and response. So I would get upset about something and fly off the handle, as a lot of young, immature salespeople tend to do. Gotten better at that over time. But I would rip explaining my position, why I was so angry, why I was so right. And I used to send those early in my career. Later in my career, as I was learning more and more, I decided to write those so that they would get out of my head. Because if you're upset about something, it occupies your mind space in a really negative way. And when you're mad at somebody else and you're carrying that around in your head, at the end of the day, what I learned was they're not suffering, I'm suffering. So what's the point of that? I'm mad at them. Why should I be the one suffering? And I'm right, of course. So why should I be the one suffering? So what I would do is I would type it into an email, and I would make all my points, and I would make a draft. I would clean it up if I needed to, but everything that was in my head that was bothering me, I'd write the email to completely make my points. I used to be on the debate team, so I know how to make an argument for something, and I would have it in the email, and then I would leave it in there. Lincoln used to do this. When Lincoln was very upset with a general or a subordinate or someone else, he would write a sort of a nasty letter, getting it all out of his head. And when he passed and they went into his desk in the White House, they found a drawer full of angry letters that he never sent. And so same thing for me. If you look at my drafts in Outlook today, you'll see there are a few dozen not so nice.
Share your screen.
No, I'm not going to do that. Not so nice emails in there. I do tend to take
me. Are any of them addressed to me?
Well, I take the person's name out of the to line in Outlook in case accidentally somehow they all get sent. I sometimes joke that one day I'm going to retire, put them all in there, and just go hit send and never log into my laptop again. And people are going to get angry emails from me from 15 years ago.
You know what?
It's a good way to clear my headspace.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about that. So anger is just energy, right? Like, so when we're angry, okay, the Buddha once said very famously, I love this quote, which is being angry at someone is like holding a hot stone in your hand with your arm cocked, ready to throw it at them. In the meantime, you're the one who gets burned. Okay. Mm-hmm. So like holding anger, we have to recognize we're the ones that is suffering, not the other person. Okay. So it's very healthy for us to have mechanisms to release that anger. I once was listening to a podcast of Tim Ferriss, and he talked about something that I learned in school at the University of Santa Monica, which was called freeform writing. And freeform writing is a psychological technique or strategy that is used in practice. And basically the way it works is, if you're pissed off about something, you take out like a yellow legal pad and a pen, not a pencil, because you don't want to break the lead. You want to go pen and you want to go hard and you want to write as fast and furious as you can. Everything, all the MFs and any other curse word you've got in there, every emotion that you're feeling, get it out, crumble it up, rip it up, throw it away, and never look at it again. Why is that a great psychological technique? Because it's that act, not typing, that act of writing feverishly and getting it out of your body. You're releasing that energy, so you're not carrying it. So Ferriss talked about the fact that, and I found this fascinating, that he starts off every morning by writing something that he's upset or triggered or pissed off about for 5-10 minutes to clear it. And he has to search sometimes for any little thing. Like, I'm pissed off that the sun's not out today, that I live in a bad city, whatever. But he gets it out, knowing that release is critical to him having good energy going into his workday. So I love the story, and I love that you've been doing that. And I would love to read some of those emails before you send them. Lastly, when you were in LA, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, you were super excited because I lived really close to the Ronald Reagan Library. I didn't go with you guys. I don't remember why I didn't, but you guys went. You went on Air Force One, all of that. Tell us about Reagan and why he's an important person in your life and what you learned from him that people that are listening could relate to in their business.
I mentioned at the top of the call that I was certainly very impressionable growing up. Still think I probably am. I grew up really enjoying politics, and Ronald Reagan was president when I was, impressionable teenager, and I really enjoyed just watching along and following along and listening to him and seeing how he was leading. One of the things that I've swiped and adopted from him over the years is his speech formula, which I've used in presentations a lot. And what Ronald Reagan would do, and as a lot of people probably know listening to this call, he was obviously an American actor who was sort of a B actor for many years. Then he was the president of the Motion Picture Association. Then he was a spokesperson for GE, traveled around the country for many, many years, meeting folks, and that's how he really became known. And then, of course, governor of California before president. And in his speech formula, very simple, but it works. Ronald Reagan would tell the audience, first he would always start with a joke, usually self-deprecating. So I often do that now. People know I make fun of my height constantly. When I get things going, it just loosens the audience up, right? Now we're all on the same page. And then he would tell people what it is that he's going to tell them about, right? So today I'm going to tell you about so-and-so. I'm going to present on so-and-so. So here's what I'm going to tell you about today. Then he would tell them what he said he was going to tell them about. And then he would close by telling them what he just told them about and gaining buy-in and ownership. And it's a very simple formula, but it really works in almost any situation because you grab people in at the beginning with a little humor, and then you have them listening to what you're going to speak about. Then you've got their attention when you actually do the speaking on the subject matter, and then you give them a summary to close it out. So it's a very effective formula that I found. A quality of Ronald Reagan's that I just loved was he knew when to push and he knew when not to push. And what I mean by that is, some of you may know the very famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate in West Berlin before the fall of the Cold War. And all of his speechwriters, they gave him a speech to give in front of the wall. And he wanted to say to Mr. Gorbachev, the then Soviet premier, that he should tear down the wall, get rid of this wall. This is ridiculous. And over time and again, he would put it in the speech and his speechwriters would pull it back out. And finally, he decided, okay, I don't really care what they say. I'm going to make a stand on this. And he told Gorbachev in that speech, if you recall, he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And that was a massive risk. But he knew as the leader that while that could provoke international problems to all kinds, there's a point where you just have to be the one that steps forward and takes the risk and takes the heat, and it's worth the price you're going to pay. And in this case, it was a big risk that paid off huge dividends, and the Berlin Wall eventually collapsed as did communism. So I think Reagan was great at reading the situation and knowing when to push the issue and matching the words with it.
Tell me about a time that you utilized that as a leader of Apex and a leader of your team. And in addition to that, tell us a little bit about the importance of leadership in leading a team of originators and or leading a team of production, of ops people. I want you to unpack that. I mean, I consider you to be one of the great leaders of anybody that I know, and certainly one of the great leaders of any of my clients. And I'd really love to have you share a little bit about your philosophies on leadership and maybe how you capitalized on what Reagan did at the wall and have used that in business.
Well, I think the leader is the one that often gets the credit, and the leader needs the one that takes the blame too. In the perfect loan process teaching, we talk about when there's a problem that goes wrong, are you blaming the person or are you blaming the process? And it's the leader's job to put the process in place. It's the leader's job to blaze the trail, to clearly communicate the direction we're going, and then to have the courage to lead people there. They should be in front, taking the charge. And, we joke, some of my longtime employees at Apex have assigned some body parts to the different owners jokingly, and the body part that they assign to me is the legs. And they say, Craig's the legs around here. And the reason he's the legs is because he gets things moving. Okay. Whereas they say my partner, Eric, he's the brains. He's the one that's always thinking everything out from every single angle. So that's where my role has been as a leader. Is I go first. I try a new marketing product first. I go into the coaching program first. I often read the book first. I often do the seminar first, and then I bring it to my people. So the leader has to go first and put themselves in that risky position of being embarrassed or failing or anything else, and creating safety for the folks that are around them. So for my origination team, I've always been, until I recently transitioned a good part of my business to them, I've been the one that's been out there doing uncomfortable things, going to the networking event where I don't know anybody in the whole room. And then 3 months later, I know the entire room, right? So putting myself in uncomfortable positions, getting out of my comfort zone to create safety and growth for me, safety for my team, to do their best and support them wherever I can. So obviously a lot of people talk about Simon Sinek when they talk about leadership. I do believe in trying to remove obstacles for my team and allowing them to be successful. I take that away from him. It sort of guides a lot of the way that I lead. I also believe that leadership is about communication. As I've learned from you, Tim, in the absence of the facts and of the story, people will make up their own narrative. And I've absolutely lived that. And I think a leader, it's super important to be clear on what's going on, what you're doing at it, what the direction is. People want to know you have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, that's okay too, because people want to help you if they like you and they want to serve and win with you. And so if you don't have a plan and you communicate that and you say you need help, then people will step up and help you create a plan. But it's all about communicating. You have to put out there. You cannot hide behind bad news. As we learn in the loan business as well, bad news does not age well. If you got a low appraisal or something else, the sooner you tell them, the better it's going to be. Rip the Band-Aid off and move forward.
Yeah, loan officers do that a lot, right? They run away from bad news and it just makes the situation even worse. What if I'm sitting here listening, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the listener, and I'm thinking, okay, like, I really do need to become a better leader. I've always said, it's for most people in the mortgage business, you didn't even know what you were signing up for when you signed up. I mean, like, you thought I've got to figure out how to read an interest rate chart and figure out how to sell myself. And if you get any good at it over time, you're kind of everything. You're the HR director for your own little company. You're the ops manager that has to create your perfect loan process. You're, somebody who needs to know underwriting guidelines, and then you need to learn how to lead and hire and train and fire and do employee reviews and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot. So what do you have? What's some simple suggestions? Point them in the right direction. If somebody said to you, hey, Craig, I just want to learn to be a little bit better leader, where should I start?
Understand that if you're a loan officer, you have a business. Now, you might work for XYZ mortgage company, but that doesn't matter because you're probably fully commissioned and you have a business. So the first thing you want to do is have a business mindset. And if it's your business, you have to invest in the business. You have to hire the people. You have to pay for the training. Don't expect your company to do that for you. Whatever they do is a bonus. A loan officer should invest 15 to 20% at least a year of their gross revenue into themselves and the tools that they use. You've got to have the right tools. If you don't have great presentation software, if you don't have a great CRM, you're just handicapping yourself against me and all the other loan officers that do. So a leader recognizes that this is a business, not just a sales job, and they invest in themselves and in their team from day one. A great resource that I sort of look at as a business Bible that I read in 2003, and then many times after, is an old book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited. And the E-Myth Revisited is a themed book that says, start with the end in mind. So basically decide what you want your loan origination book or your mortgage company to look like, and start with that end in mind. And something that Eric and I did years ago is we wrote out, I wish I still had this piece of paper, but we drew out an organizational chart of basically what we wanted our mortgage brokerage to look like down the road. And we had rectangles and we had positions there, and we wrote my name or his name in every single box. And over time, we would basically cross out that person's name as we had enough money, or we could hire somebody for that position, whether it was a bookkeeper, probably the first thing, then a loan processor, and then so on. And eventually we blew out that org chart completely and grew to a whole different level. So start with the end in mind. Certainly act as if, look, if you're a young loan officer and you're saying, you know what, I haven't done a lot of loans, that's okay. You can still talk like you have, okay? Fake it till you make it. It does work. Get the scripting down and make the investments in yourself. All of that works. But as far as the leader of the lending team, remember, as I said earlier, you are the one that owns how things go. So, unfortunately, the large majority of problems that come up in the loan process, once it's in processing or underwriting or closing, that problem probably started at origination. Right? So it's really easy to point the finger at someone else when that problem comes up. If you really unpack it, it probably started at origination. Not always, but often. So doing a great job up front, which you've heard from every manager you've ever had, is critical. My partner, Eric, jokes that loan officers make doctor, lawyer money. In fact, frequently we make more than doctor, lawyer money. Well, lawyers went to school for 7 years. Doctors went to school sometimes 10 to 12. Okay. So think about how much time and energy they've prepared for their profession. The least we can do is know the guidelines and have a written process that we're going to deliver to our customers a great experience. That's what leadership of a lending origination team looks like. And when things go wrong, we don't blame the person. We blame the process. The first time something goes wrong, we look at it as a learning opportunity. We revisit our a perfect loan process, and we plug the gap. The second time, it's on us because we didn't fix it the first time, right? But again, looking at the process, the leader looks at what went wrong in the process, not what went wrong with the people. Getting the people on the bus, the right people on the bus, is super important. Personality profiling and disc testing, all that's important. But at the end of the day, the leader has responsibility for the team.
I would add to check out Simon Sinek if you haven't watched any of his TED Talks, or there's a great impact theory interview with him and Tom Bilyeu that I recommend. There's 2 TED Talks, one of them on leadership in particular that is outstanding. I would also recommend Ryan Holiday. I think that, Ryan takes a very interesting approach to leadership that is quite brilliant, which is, accessing the Stoic teachers of, 2000 years ago and their leadership strategies, which are still certainly applicable to this day. I would also say that the one thing I really want to just dive in a little bit deeper with you on, bro, is like, Man, it really is. It's some huge percentage. I don't know what it is, 80%, 85, 90% of the time that I think that the challenge on a loan starts with the originator. It may be that they didn't dot every I and cross every T in the documentation that they requested. It may be that they didn't fully get commitment from the borrower. It may be that they didn't go into the granularity that was necessary in creating comfort and educating the borrower on the decision they're going to make, and they start to get squirrely. Or it just may be them not endorsing their team as fully as they need to. So the team has credibility and the borrower isn't fighting them and the realtor isn't fighting the team, which creates problems as well. So as an originator, I used to use the analogy you may remember of Che Guevara, who is somebody who I studied a lot about, former partner to Fidel Castro in overthrowing Cuba back in the 1950s. And what I was always fascinated about with Che was his leadership style was very simple. And it's one that I think that I've pretty much embodied for most of my career, which is don't ask your team to be great if you're not going to be better than great. Like, period. Like, you have to be in your A game at all times. And if you are, your team will adopt to that, right? They're going to model you. They're going to mimic you. Your team is a chameleon to you. So if you're phoning it in and you're a B- and expecting your team to be an A, then you're just simply a hypocrite at that point, and you're not going to be very successful. And I see that happen far too many times. All right. So
Tim, on historical leadership references that people want, there's a book called Lincoln on Leadership. Obviously, I love that one. There's also a book called Leadership Lessons from the Civil War, another great book. And then there's a Reagan book that's written by an author named Strock, S-T-R-O-C-K. And those are all good historical books related to great leadership. If people are enjoying the historical theme that I have here.
Are you a fan of realtors, by the way?
I have a number of realtors that I enjoy working with.
Okay. That's such a politically, I guarantee you that 50%, if not more, of those drafts were drafted to realtors that you didn't send. Okay. So how important is it to diversify your referral sources, right? I mean, that's, I think, a superpower of yours. I mean, something that makes you unique to the marketplace. I mean, you mentioned your financial advisor referral system, which is something that I think people should inquire more about because it's really good and you're really good at teaching it. But let's unpack the subject matter of alternative referral sources. I mean, everybody knows about realtors. I mean, you've dabbled a little bit in it. So did I, but you really have owned a different pocket of the market. And I think it would be cool for you to share a little bit about how that went about and what you've done to cultivate it.
Realtors are a great source of business. They're actually the best source of business in terms of mortgage referrals. It's just that they're the most difficult to get referrals from. So, and that's because it's a hyper competitive environment with a lot of loan officers going after the same, smaller group of good realtors that do enough buy-side transactions to really spend time with. So you can go after that. And I do think that you should have a pillar of business with realtors, but I think you should have multiple pillars. Most loan officers, their pillar of business is realtors, and then some of them get some past customer, repeat clients and referrals and things like that. I don't think that's enough. I think that you should have those for sure. Realtors, you should be crazy great at databasing and CRM. That is just a layup. So for me, knowing things about people in terms of when their birthdays are and doing special things for that. I'm not just talking about an email. I'm talking about a birthday message or a video or a personal gift or something like that. Goes a huge, really long way. Knowing when they have a child, right, and sending a baby gift. So things like personal things you can connect with people in terms of CRM, I think is super important as a pillar of business, not just a tool to stay in touch, but a pillar of business, using that effectively to touch people on life events. Non-realtor referral sources. So for me, that's networking, family lawyers, and financial advisors. By far the biggest one of those is financial advisors. When people get a loan officer's name from a realtor, it's frequently multiple loan officers' names. And frequently the realtor is not doing a very good scripting handoff, and they're just saying, here, call these guys, see who has the best rate, something like that. People pay their financial advisors for their advice, so they tend to follow it. When a financial advisor makes a referral, they give out one name, and people tend to follow that referral as well. So it's a much stickier referral, and there's a lot more scripting that goes around the financial planning and mortgage piece. So it's really great. Financial advisors are very professional. They want to learn more about the technical side of the mortgage. It's just more of a fun way to work. And as you probably heard me say a million times, they don't work weekends and they don't work evenings. So it really is a personal choice as well. Then you've got divorce lawyers, family law attorneys. This is a longer burn. I consider this a minor pillar of business, but it's definitely good for, a couple dozen deals a year for sure. And what you want to do with those guys is meet them where they are. Cold calling is not going to work. Just randomly mailing them is not going to work. You want to figure out where they are and meet them there. Family law section of the bar is usually a good place to meet people. They have seminars, they have happy hours, they have mixers you can sponsor, all kinds of ideas there. And you want to provide information to them that is relevant to mortgages and divorce, because they frequently need that information. And so if you can put that information in front of them regularly, you're going to get called. And then finally, general networking, which is basically being involved in your local chambers, your Rotary, your boards, nonprofit boards of groups of charitable causes that you feel passionate about. These are all places to get business. And my formula is a two-part formula. If you join an organization, first thing you want to do is volunteer. Volunteer to be on the membership committee, volunteer to be on the rules committee, volunteer to be on the event planning committee, whatever it is, volunteer. Because in order to get business, you have to get people confident in referring to you. And in order to get people confident in giving you referrals, you have to demonstrate competence. So competence leads to confidence. So if you raise your hand to volunteer in an organization to do something, and of course, you've got to do it well and execute and report back in, people will start to see you as someone that they know and trust and will get things done. And when you get to that point, then they will ask you about their mortgage. Okay, you don't have to sell mortgages. Just show up, have a long runway. Networking is a marathon, not a sprint. The one event, the raising your hand is the one piece. The piece number two is the social event. Everybody makes the mistake of just going to the happy hour, getting no business, and then saying this organization stinks. But if you're volunteering within the organization and helping the people that work there and that are members there and connecting others, then when you show up at that social engagement, that happy hour, you will eventually become what's called an anchor. If you ever look around a room when people are networking, there are 3 or 4 people that are not moving. And everybody is just circling around them, wanting to talk to them in those groups. That's called an anchor. That's what you want to be in a networking environment or in a membership organization. So what you want to do to get to that point is go wide, first of all, meaning go check out lots of organizations, see where you like the people and can participate and have fun. And once you find a couple of those, you only need 2 or 3. Don't take 10. So you go wide first to find out where those are, and then you go deep. You volunteer as much as you can and go to as many of those events as you can. You become a known quantity. Then you'll be an anchor at networking events, and the business will follow very quickly.
Is the anchor? Do you become an anchor because of the competence part? Or do you become an anchor because you just are seen there frequently?
No, just being seen there frequently and having too many drinks and being an idiot is not the formula. But being someone that somebody said, yeah.
So you you never became an anchor then?
Exactly. Well, I'm a little too short to become an anchor. Actually, it's hard when you're short. But seriously, I did become an anchor in a number of organizations.
Who's that guy that's not moving? That's on his knees.
We can't see him. Everybody's surrounding him. Who's in the middle of that circle? Yeah.
Why are they rubbing his head?
Exactly right. But be patient. I was a member of the Board of Trade starting in 1999. I was in the membership committee. I did a lot of work for a long time. I got no deals. And then in 2003, rates dropped and I refinanced 35 plus people from the 60-person committee in that one calendar year when rates dropped. Everybody said, oh my God, rates are low, go talk to Craig. And after the meetings, there'd be a line waiting to talk to me. So be patient with the networking piece. And in terms of the nonprofit piece, find something that you really love and you feel strongly about and volunteer, which feels so good, by the way. And then you'll demonstrate competence there as well, and the business will follow. So those are non-realtor things you can do that will generate a lot of business. And I will say on the networking side, you can join leads groups where you show up and have to pass leads and all that, but that's sort of not fun and it feels sort of pressury and those things don't last long. What I recommend is starting your own group. Strategically inviting a CPA, a financial planner, a homeowner's insurance agent, a realtor, an estate planning attorney, all these types of people, right? Stay away from the Vitamix guy and those people. But, professionals, and tell them that you are putting this group together and it's a mastermind group and you're going to be sharing best practices and helping people build their businesses. Don't talk about leads. Leads will follow. And tell them the group is for a 1-year period of time, right? Because if it has a finite ending point, then you can create a new group the next year and you can still keep all of those other contacts. So you don't want to just be open-ended. You want it to have a timeline, agendas for each meeting, and you want to have ownership of it and control the invites. Tons of information there that we could go deeper on. But I do want to go a little deeper on a couple of them because I think that it's noteworthy. One of the things that came to mind is a quote that I've always loved from Napoleon Hill from Think and Grow Rich, where he says, "Success lies just beyond the point where everyone else gives up." And I find that to be so true in the mortgage business. Most loan originators will pick a niche, whether it be, going after financial planners or going after human resource directors or doing consumer direct. And they don't just see it through long enough. They just quit because they don't get the immediate return, which is the real problem with a refi boom, right? Because in a refi boom, success comes easy. So you get spoiled and you expect things to just happen quickly. Whereas when refis go away and you're looking to build long-term relationships with referral partners, relationships take time and it takes figuring it out. Like I often reference the fact that, I think I've told you this before, 6 months we paid a full-time salesperson, in-house salesperson at Loan Toolbox before he made his first sale. It took him 6 months working every day to make one sale. And it was because we were trying to figure it out. And when we finally figured it out, boom, then we scaled it and it took off. But it takes some tweaking and adjusting. And you got to go into it with that in mind, right? You got to go into it thinking, this is a long race. I'm going to pace myself. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. I'm going to be curious rather than I'm going to look for immediate gratification. What I want to unpack is, let's go back to the financial planner piece. Because I do know that that's been a core pinnacle of business for you. And of course, if you haven't connected these dots, folks, all these other alternative sources of business are incredibly valuable because they allow you to control the lead and make the referral to a realtor. Okay. Correct. You got that? Like that's really key. What's the ultimate unique selling proposition for a real estate agent? Business. If you control the lead and you can give business to them, you can have just about anybody you want. You don't have to pay for half their Zillow or Boomtown or all that stuff. Okay. So let's go to the financial planner piece because I know that's been huge. What were some hurdles that you ran into? Like what were the things that, like walls that you ran up against that you had to figure out how to go around, and how did you go around them to ultimately cultivate that business? It's a more technical sell. And that's why most loan officers don't go after it, because they don't really know what to say and how to position it. Financial advisors are astute financial professionals who understand money really well. And so you have to be educated in money and in personal finance in order to really have a value prop. Now, some loan officers will just go after financial advisors and they have good rates and great service, and that'll be enough. And that's because most financial advisors are never approached by mortgage people, and those that are generally have bad experiences with them. So if they find somebody good, they tend to stick with them. But that's not the real value prop. The real value prop is that financial advisors generally get paid for assets under management. So they get paid when more money comes in, right? They also get paid by protecting the portfolio from money going out. And what we can do as mortgage originators is we can help create new cash flows for investing by freeing up cash for people overpaying on their mortgage, people refinancing and saving money. So that's new money coming into the financial plan that can help to shore up things like I spoke about it earlier in the call, maxing out the employer-sponsored 401k, starting at 529 to pay for college, making sure the right insurance policies are in place, all of these things that financial planners want. And then, of course, preserving money from leaving. So a lot of times you save up money to buy a home and now you're going to liquidate the whole thing. Well, maybe you could just put less money down and borrow at a lower rate and keep the money invested. Most homeowners, when they go to sell a home, they think they have to just roll over the old proceeds. Some of them think that's because of the tax law, which changed in 1986, by the way. So what if I can show you a way to put 20% down instead of 50 and still have an affordable payment that you're comfortable with, and put $300,000 lump sum with your financial advisor? Well, if I do that, that's a triple win. The customer wins because they're borrowing at a lower rate than what they're probably going to get on their investment longer term, and they're creating safety and liquidity with the financial advisor. I'm happy because we've just done a larger mortgage, and the financial advisor is thrilled because he or she wanted to tell them to do that. But if they do, it looks like a money grab. No, don't put your money into the down payment. Give it to me and let me manage it, and I'll charge you to do it. I'm third party validating the entire strategy. So they really need me. So we are critical. Most financial advisors, if you say, do you have a great CPA? Yes. Do you have a great estate planning attorney? Yes. Do you have a great mortgage planning partner? No. Well, why? Who's helping you manage the liability side of the balance sheet? And how are you managing the home equity in the house, by the way? I can help you with all this. I can take this on for you.
And if you don't have a partner and you're not controlling your client's decision-making process to some extent by suggesting that they work with that partner, they're going to go work with Wells. They're going to work with Chase. They're going to go work with people who compete with you, and you run the risk of losing them as a client long-term because they're going to cross-sell them once they get their mortgage. I would imagine you use that too as a part of the discussion.
Cross-selling is a big piece of it. You know, the loan application is one of the most comprehensive financial documents, and a lot of loan officers at large banks get paid if they internally cross-sell to the financial advisory guy. So it's a huge problem if they do that. And, you know, we talked about this previously, Tim. Last year, you look at the last 24 months of refinancing and how crazy it was. If somebody called their financial advisor in 20 or 21 and said, you know, first of all, the financial advisor should have been putting that opportunity in front of their clients. But if they weren't, and somebody said, I know rates are low, should I refinance? The advisor says, yeah, you should probably look into it. Well, who should I call? Well, call your bank or your loan servicer. Really? Like, I'm paying you thousands of dollars to manage my money. And one, you haven't called out this opportunity to me. And two, you don't have somebody that you can recommend to help me handle my largest liability. You say that you have comprehensive financial planning on your website, blah, blah, blah. But what about my mortgage? That's part of my finances too. So this is a critical piece of the plan that, and it's not the advisor's fault. They're usually just not thinking about it. When I come at them with this, they go, wow, I never really thought of it that way. Okay. And so it's a very open conversation. They're almost always willing to take the meeting, but this is really important. You have to plan, and you have to educate yourself. This is where continuous improvement and education really matter. You can't show up and throw up like at a realtor meeting, go have coffee and come up 10, 15 minutes late and show up sloppy and have no preparation. That just doesn't work with advisors. Okay. You want a presentation book so that you can quickly access materials. You want to show up with case studies that show them mortgage planning strategies that they can use in their business right away. You want to make sure you have references. You want to show them your process. Remember, they get paid every year on this money. So if they hand you this client, they're risking a recurring revenue stream. So you got to show them exactly what's going to happen if they refer you the client. Here's my perfect loan process. I want to let you know, this is people on my team. Here's my reviews. Here's how I'm going to handle it if you send me somebody. You have to develop confidence through competence in what you say and what you show them in that meeting. So get your credentials first, learn the language and knowledge. It's more work up front than just calling realtors, but it's also much better reward on the back end.
100%. No question about it. I was fortunate to work with a few and a couple of accountants as well, and they were way better referral partners than any realtor I had. I'm going to ask you one more business question, then I want to ask you a few personal questions before we wrap up. I'm going to take you and I'm going to drop you into a new city, and you're going to start from scratch. Seattle, you're going to compete with Dirk Novell, which should be easy. Okay. We're going to put you in Seattle. I'm sure I'll get an email from Dirk as soon as he watches this. We're going to put you in Seattle, and you're starting from scratch. You don't have a database. You don't have any referral partner relationships. In today's market, what's the first couple of things that you do?
I think different loan officers would do different things. If it was me being dropped into a new market, the first thing I would do is probably join the Financial Planning Association that's in the local market. Then I would figure out the largest business organization. Is it the Board of Trade? Is it the Chamber? What is it that's in there? And I would join that next. I would go to those organizations and I would make myself known quickly. I would fully participate. I would join committees. I would attend networking events. I would offer presentations on mortgages. I would be building my database as quickly as I can with the context that I can, and doing as many one-on-ones as I could with those people. I would form my own networking group by going online and looking up, or going into the directories of those chambers and looking up who some of the top certified CPAs were, estate planning attorneys, as I said, homeowners insurance agencies. I would be calling those people up, introducing myself, letting them know I'm putting together a mastermind group and inviting them in. So that's the third thing I would be doing, is the networking group, the FPA, the chambers. And those are the primary things. I wouldn't go tearing into realtor offices because I don't think that's going to have the highest ROI for me. But those are the first three things I would do, and they would keep me very busy in the process. And of course, if I was completely new to a city and I knew nobody, as I made friends, I would ask them for warm referrals and recommendations to folks that they had worked with in these areas: real estate, insurance, financial planning, accounting, all that stuff. I would ask them for warm referrals to folks that they had dealt with, that they were happy with, and have as many meetings. Remember, networking is a contact sport and a numbers game, particularly at the beginning.
Excellent. Take me back to when you were a kid. What were you like?
How to characterize that? I was gregarious for sure.
Okay.
I was, well, you probably figured this out, but I was a great athlete. I was a soccer goalie at the beginning until height started to matter. And then I was a baseball catcher, all-star baseball catcher, I should add, which is to say that I was always in the middle of things. Right, the goalie on the soccer team, the catcher on the baseball, are always right in the thick of things, of the action, and taking the hits. I love Teddy Roosevelt's famous speech about being the man in the arena. I love being in the middle of the action, and I don't have a lot of tolerance for those that sit back and criticize without trying themselves. So in terms of being a kid, I went through a lot, little ups and downs as a kid. I came from a divorced family. I learned a lot from that experience. In terms of the comments about space between stimulus response and lessons I've learned and regrets I have and things like that. So I would say overall, it was a great childhood. I was in 4 different schools in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade. So I really learned what it was like to try to get along in a new environment and make new friends. But overall, I had a nice childhood and a great high school experience as well.
And I'm really glad I asked that question, because something was kind of, I didn't have that as a question that I had written down that I might want to ask you. It just kind of came to me, and I think I can connect some dots here. I don't know if you've ever connected these dots, but you're always in the middle of the action, which, by the way, the Teddy Roosevelt quote, actually, I've recently heard the quote because I just watched that Brene Brown Netflix special like last week, which, if you haven't watched it, it's spectacular. I mean, Brene Brown is a terrific speaker and she has great content. And that book, Daring Greatly, she wrote is because of Teddy Roosevelt, because in that speech, he uses that phrase, right? And, being in the arena. And it's interesting that you describe yourself as being a goalie, a catcher, always in the middle of the action. You're leveraging that in your answer to what you would do if I dropped you into Seattle by yourself, right?
Right.
You would get into the middle of the action, right?
Yes.
And be gregarious, right?
Yes.
So, I really want to impart upon everyone listening that what we're really talking about here is somebody who's just leveraging his true gifts. And this is something that we work on with everybody in the Leadership 360 program, and is, what is your genius? What comes natural to you? What is high return on energy for you? Instead of trying to be somebody that you're not, being who you are and leveraging that talent. So I would offer that to everyone listening, that to really take a little inventory of your life and what has come easy to you. What has been your superpower? What are the things that are graceful and uplifting for you? And how can you leverage that to grow your business? Next question. Sammy's what, 20 now, maybe?
19.
Okay. Sammy's 19. Oliver's 16?
17.
17. Okay. So your 2 boys, what advice about life are you giving to them right now based upon what you've learned?
I'm letting them find their own way. I find that at those ages, if they want my advice, they'll ask for it. And if I offer it proactively, it's probably not going to be that well received. So I'm just learning. It's hard being almost 50 years old. They don't realize how cool I actually am. And maybe they'll figure that out later. But, so that you're great when you were younger, and you keep that when you get older, and then your kids don't think you're the coolest guy in the world. And you got to learn to live with that. But I'm learning that, they need to find their own way. And my dad was great in that regard. He tried to help me find my own way and did support me when, whatever direction I went in. I was super into politics. I was super into debate. And he just, sort of let me go, and we will figure it out. And I feel like it's the same for them. My son Sammy's a great musician, studying musical composition, and I know that he's going to be successful no matter what he does. So he just needs to decide how to do it. Oliver is not sure yet what he's going to do, but whatever it is, I know he'll do it greatly. So I feel like as a parent, just like as a leader, I want to let my team, find their path and support them in any way I can. And with my sons, it's the same way. I love them so much, and I'll just be there for them.
Yeah, it's super tricky, right? Like you, as a parent, like it's interesting. You know, the book that you guys recently got for me for my birthday, where everybody wrote these passages. Which, thank you again for what you wrote to me. What Trey wrote to me, my son, was easily one of the most touching things I've ever read. Like I wept when I read it. And it was very much in line with what you're describing, just that he's 23 now. And he talked about the fact of the 3 phases of his experience of me as a father. And the first phase is when he was a boy. And then I was the guy that got everything done, and the guy that he had to get permission from, and the guy who kept everything safe and made sure that we had a good home and all of that. And then in the middle phase, he talked about how I was the guy who questioned his moves and seemed to have an opinion that he didn't want to hear all the time. And how in the third phase, the phase that he's currently in, is that that I'm the guy that's his biggest fan, and the guy that he knows he can call for anything, and that I'll listen. And like, you're on the right path with that, bro. I really loved your answer. I mean, you're right. They don't want, boys and girls don't want us to parent them when they're trying to break away, right? And to develop their sense of self. And the more that we can give them space, the more trust that's built, the more connection that's built, and the more they're going to want to come for advice. So brilliant response there. If you could turn back the clock and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give him with the benefit of being able to wind the clock back, that you wish you would have gotten or had been given?
I've been reading The Daily Stoic, Ryan Holiday's book, where new passage each day. And I read it last year and I'm reading it again this year. And each day it's just one page. It's really helpful. I think I would just tell myself to chill out. Like, I've always been the kind of person, as so many people are, in terms of chasing something specific, trying to get to a destination. And I have learned, as cliche as this is, that that's not really the end game. The journey is the fun part. And I've been trying really hard to always get to the next point. But then at the next point, you're not necessarily happier because you're just moving the goalpost to the point after that. And that's just useless. So I've learned that sometimes possessions cause headaches. And just because you can get something doesn't mean you should get something, because it might cause more negative energy trying to keep it the way you want, or cause friction with other people. That's come to me over time. But really just staying focused on being present and enjoying where I am now. I got a Peloton about a month and a half ago. And I love the way they yell at you when you're working out on there. It's fun. And the instructor, she said, be here on this ride, put your phone away, be present. This is your time. Whatever you're working out in your life, work through it right here. And then she said, something that I will never forget. She said, the only person you're in competition with is the person you were yesterday. Ooh. And that really hit me like a brick. Like, I don't have to compete with anybody else. I'm about continually improving who I am as a person, business, personally, with my family, everything else. And I don't have to compare myself to other people. I can just want to continue to build on where I am now. So, and then the other one, same instructor, said a few days later, just because you're trying to get better doesn't mean you can't be happy with where you are now and who you are now. And that really resonated with me a lot as well.
Man, beautiful share, bro. Like, who's the instructor? I actually want to write it down. Do you know the instructor's name?
Emma Lovewell.
Emma Lovewell?
Yep.
Probably just got her a whole bunch of fans, man.
I think she's got millions of fans already.
That's all right. She can use a few more. Oh man, I forgot what I was going to say. Shoot. I was so engrossed in that story about like it's not being hard on yourself, and I know what it was. I shifted something in my journaling recently in the morning. I used to, for about a year and a half, I would write down 3 things in the morning that I was grateful for and 1 thing in the morning that I was proud of about myself. And I decided to flip it over on January 1st. So I've been writing down 3 things that I'm proud of and 1 thing that I'm grateful for. And it's been a really interesting experience because there are days where I'm sitting there kind of staring at the walls going, can't really think of anything that I'm proud of, which is actually a good thing in the sense that it's like all that surface level crap, that it's easy. Like I'm proud of the fact that I took my mom to dinner last night for Valentine's Day, or, I'm proud of the fact that, like I'm always there for my son. But it's when I sit there with no answer, and then I'm forced to get underneath it all and just find the littlest thing, like I'm proud that I worked out hard yesterday, or I'm proud that I stayed in touch with this one friend, or whatever. Like, I think that there's a real value in reminding yourself of your goodness is my point. And I think that that's what she's probably trying to say too, is, we're so good, as we've talked about many times, about taking the whip to ourselves. And there's a lot of room in there for some self-acknowledgement that can really be a springboard to having a better day all the way around.
Yeah.
If we're kind to ourselves.
And it's really hard to have a bad day, Tim, if you start the morning by writing down a couple things you're thankful for, or by doing one small nice thing for someone else. That could just be reaching out to an old friend or anything like that. Small acts of mitzvot, which is, small generous gestures in Hebrew, all along the path to tikkun olam, which is the concept of helping to repair the world. And some of the very little things I do in terms of volunteer work are the best parts. And they make, sometimes you just feel so much better by giving. This week I have once a month on a Friday, I deliver challah, which is, Jewish bread, as you may know, for Shabbat to older folks who cannot leave the house. And so they'll have it for a Zoom Shabbat on a Friday afternoon. It's a very simple thing. Doesn't take me very long. Sometimes I have to hold back tears just dropping it off. That's how good it makes you feel. So doing things like that to fill up your own bucket really pay huge dividends. And if you can help others along the way, it's just great.
Man, I've got an audio for you in May. You're going to have a walking contemplation in the redwoods at 1440 that's going to just bring it all up for you, bro. Just some beautiful stuff that speaks to exactly what you shared.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm always happy when we're on retreat together. Hey, bro, thank you, man, for an incredible interview filled with value. My post-coaching suggestions are going to be lengthy from this interview. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to reference. I want to thank everybody for listening. I also want to ask you, Craig, how do you want people to get a hold of you? I know people are going to want to talk to you about many of the things you talked about. They're going to want to talk to you about your financial advisor referral partner system and how they can get access to that. How would you like them to reach you?
The system is financialadvisorreferralsystems.com. That's really easy. My email is craig@apexhomeloans.com. You can Google my name and you'll hit my contact info page. It's all on there with my email and phone. So if they want to hit me up, they can certainly feel free to shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to connect. I truly am appreciative of individuals like you, Tim, and so many of your colleagues that are a little older than me, but not much. That's who I learned from coming up and Swipe and Adapted. And I definitely have a desire to help other loan officers improve as well.
That's fun to give back and fun to teach. And we're both here to do just that. And I'm super happy that we're on the same team. Can't think of anybody that I was more excited about being on this team with. So thanks, bro, for being here. Thanks for being such a great teacher and a giver. And I love you, man.
Love you too. Thanks for having me.
You got it.